Hey guys, how's it going? I'm back here with another video, and today I decided to bring this video which I feel like a lot of you guys have requested me in the past, which is on how to create a multi-step form in ReactJS. Now, as always, I will be focusing primarily on the logic aspect of stuff. I don't care that much about the appearance, but just so you guys can get an idea, this is basically what I built. All the CSS will be in the description. I won't be actually going over the CSS since the focus is working with the React part of the project. However, if you're just interested in getting the code, it's going to be in the description. But basically what we're going to build is the following. It's just a little sign up page over here, and you're able to put some information, and there's multiple steps to this form, right? And there's different ways to to portray the multitude of the steps, but I decided to go with the progress bar, as you can see over here. So I'm in the sign up page, so I can put over here like some sort of email. As you can see, I can put a password like 123 and another password and click next, and now I'm in the next step of the form. There's only 3 steps on this one, but you can definitely add more. I'll put my name, my last name, my username, and basically it just goes forward, and at the end, which is the last step, I didn't really know what to put here, but I put this over here, and you can just put other stuff, and you can click on submit. I'm not going to click on submit yet because I just wanted to show you guys the information gets saved. So like if you go back on the steps, you can see that each of the each of the values in the inputs are saved, and at the end you see this button change to a submit button. You can just click on it, and for now it just says like form submitted, but here's the part where you would put your whatever you want to do with submitting the form. So this is basically what we're going to build. Before we get into the video, if you guys could leave a like and subscribe, I would massively appreciate it because it would help push my videos to more people. We've hit 30,000 subscribers, and that's honestly crazy. I couldn't be more proud of my community, of my channel, and I really wanted to thank you guys. But if you guys could just leave a like, help promote the video, I'll be really happy. With that in mind, let's get into the tutorial. Okay everyone, so as you can see over here, I have an application, a React application open into my computer. I basically didn't do anything. I just ran create React app. I deleted some of the files like the setup test, the report, like the web vitals file, and the index.css file. These are the 3 ones that I left. It doesn't really matter which files you use or not. We're not going to be focusing on them. But the first thing I really want to do is I want to create a folder inside of my SRC, or inside of my source folder called components, and I'll separate my project into a good amount of components. And the first one will be called a form component, so I'll call it form.js, and this component will exist for the purpose of managing the whole form. So what do I mean by that? Basically, we're gonna have a form, right, with multiple steps. And this will just be the container of all the steps. So basically, this should just be the component which will store most of our information. So what we're going to do with this is, for now, let's just write something like form over here. And inside of our app.js, we want to import the form component from the /components folder /form path. And what we'll just do is we'll just instantiate this component over here, so that it's actually rendering inside of our project our form component, as you can see. Now, inside of our form component, what we really want to do is the following. We want to start out by dividing this component into a few different things. The first one is, and I'll divide them, giving them class names. And as I mentioned, I won't be showing you guys the CSS, but I need to give the HTML elements class names so that when the CSS is added, it will work out. So the way we structure this is I'll have a div called just form. This will be the div around everything. Then inside, I'll divide this into 2 different things. First will be a div for the progress bar. So I'll just give it a class name of progress bar, or whatever we want to call. I'll just call it progress bar like this. And then I'll have a div for the form container. So like the actual form appearing for the user. So I'll say form container. And if you saw in the beginning, the form is kind of divided, like each page is kind of divided into 3 different things. The header, which is just the title of the step. then the body, which is like all the inputs and stuff, and the footer, which is the two buttons, the previous and next button. So I want to divide it the same way. I'll come over here and I'll just put a div and give it a class name of header. Then I'll do the same thing for the body and the footer. So body and also footer, like this. And we can start adding some elements to them. For example, for the footer, we really just want to have the two buttons inside of here. So for now, I'll just add two buttons. One will say prev and one will say next. And obviously, it won't have any impact right now, but as we add our elements, you'll see how it works out. Now, we really need to handle the different steps that we're gonna have in our project, right? If you recall, my example, I had 3 steps, but you can have multiple, you can have more, you can have 2, you can have how many you want. And in my case, they're kind of specific. For example, I have first a step which you put sign up information. Then the second step, you put personal information. And then at the end, I just couldn't come up with something else. So I just called it other information, like you just put other stuff. So I want to create 3 different components over here, one for each step. So I'll call the first one sign up info.js. Then I'll just create a component, as you can see over here. And I'll just create one for the personal information. So personal info.js. And then finally for the other, right? So I'll just call it other info.js. And I'll create the component for each one of them. And I'll create one for this as well. If you want to know what snippets I'm using to auto-generate the component, I'll leave a link for it in the description. Just click on that and download it for your VS Code, and you can auto-generate stuff like this. So over here, I'll just close both of them, like all of them. And what we really want to have is each of them will represent the body of each like step, right? So they will just include, like, instead of each of these components, it will include just the inputs and all the stuff related to that step of the form. Now, the way we want to manage this is by coming here at the top, and in our form, we want to determine which step we are in by using a state. So I'll call a useState. I'll import useState from React, and I want to create something called a state, which will be called page. And if you're not familiar with states, I have videos on states if you want to check it out. But basically, it will just be a variable that will keep track of which step of our form we are in. We can call it step as well. I like to call it page. But basically, it will just hold, like, if you're in the first page or the second page or in the last page. So I'll call it page, and I'll call the function to mutate this variable called setPage. And I'll set it equal to useState. And it will be a number, which we want to start at 0, meaning that it will be the first. We want to start our form right at the first step or the first page, which will be the sign up info in our case. And what we want to do for now is we also want to keep track of the titles, right? So each step or each of these pages, they have a title. If you recall in the beginning, one has the personal info title, the other one has the sign up info, then the other info. It just says like sign up page, personal page, or other as well. Those are the titles. You can do this in many ways. The way I like to do this is just by having an array over here. So I'll just create an array, as you can see, calling it form titles, and set it equal to just an array with the titles. So for the first page, it will include, I'll just say the title will be sign up. Then for the second one, it will just be personal information or personal info, and the last title will be other. So this is just a title that will appear at the top of the form. And what we really want to do is we want to display this title based on which page we're in. So I'll put this over here, form titles, inside of the header, because where we want to display the title. So I'll just say that inside of the header, I want to have an h1 tag, which will show the element in the form titles array based on which page we are in. So for example, if page is equal to 0, I want to show the title sign up. If it's equal to 1, we want to show this one, and if it's equal to this, we'll show this one. So we can dynamically change the title in the form based on which page or which step of the form we are in. So I'll just say form titles, and I'll put page over here. And you should see that initially it should say sign up, but if page, it says sign up because we defined the state to start at 0. If it started at 1, it would be personal info, as you can see over here. And it's looking great. I want to just center this so you guys can see it a little bit better. Actually, I'll just zoom in a little bit so you guys can see. It's pretty zoomed in, but you guys can see it a little bit better now. So what I want to do is, now that I have this, I want to start making the buttons work. And what I mean by that is, if I click on the next button, I want to move next. And if I click on the prev button, I want to move to the left. Well, how do we do that? It's pretty simple. All we do is just come over here and add an on click to this, and we write a function inside of here which basically determines if we want to move right or left. If we click on the next button, we want to increment the page state +1. So the way we do this is we say set page, then we grab the previous page, so I'll just call it current page. Let's just call it this variable current page, and we just set it equal to current page +1. All we're doing here is we're saying that when you click on this button, we want to change the page state to be equal to whatever it was before +1, meaning that we're moving forward to the right. And since the form titles is dynamically changing based on which value of the page it is, if page becomes 1 instead of 0, it should show personal info, which is exactly what happens. And we can keep clicking, but if we get to other and we click next, it will break. The reason why it will break is because there is no, like, the page value now is bigger than the amount of elements in this array. So what we want to do for now is we want to say that this button will be disabled if page value is equal to 2, or 2, because in our case we have 3 elements in the array. Or we can just say that if it is equal to form titles dot length, so the length of the amount of steps we have, -1. So that's what we do for, so we can't click on the next button when we get to the last one. You see it's disabled, right? But we can click to the prev one, although we haven't put the on-click functionality yet. So for the on-click for the previous one, pretty much the same thing. I'll just copy the on-click and paste it over here. Only difference is, instead of being +1, it should be -1. And also the disabled part, I'll put it here as well. And the only difference in this case is we don't want to disable the prev one if it's on the last element or in the last step. We want to disable it if it is on the first one, because you can't go to the left, right? If you're in the first element, you can go to the left. And you can see that now it's working perfectly. You can keep going to the right until you reach the end, and you can keep going to the left until you are in the beginning. So this is kind of how we're going to work with it. However, we still haven't displayed any of the components that we created. So what can we do? For now, I'll just put here something to distinguish them so you guys can see. So for the personal info one, I'll just write personal, whatever. I'll just write personal. For the other one, I'll just write other. And for the sign up, I'll just write sign up like this. And I'll close the components. And what I want to do now is I want to write some sort of logic that will determine which ones we want to display, which components we want to display inside of this body div. Well, one good thing about React is that you can create functions that return HTML. Those are known as components. But what you can do inside of here is, inside of every component, you can just create a function that does that in itself. So for example, if I want to display the form, I can create a function called page display, for example, and I'm just giving it capital letters initially, because that's how I like to call functions that usually like this return HTML instead of just like normal JavaScript logic. This isn't standard, you can do whatever you want, but this is how I like to do it. Basically, this function will be a normal function, but at the end, it will check to see which page we're in, and it will return a component based on that. So what do I mean by that? Well, over here, right now, if I say return h1 hello world, you should see that if I call this page display inside of this body like this, and I actually call the function, it should display hello world. No matter where we are, it will show hello world because we're calling the function inside of here, which returns this. So all it gets is this over here. But what we want is we want to display based on which page we're in. So what I want to do is I want to say if page is equal to 0, then we want to display the sign up component because it is the sign up component, is the first one, right? So I'll just say return sign up info, and this is the component that we want. However, we need to import this from the components folder over here. So the way we do this is we basically come over here and we just import sign up info from / sign up info, and we'll just use this over here. Then we just say else if, and if the page is equal to 1, which isn't 0, so it's the second one, so I'll just say 1 over here, then we want to return the personal info component. So I'll just copy this, import the personal info one like this, personal info, and just return personal info as a component. And then finally, if it isn't both of them, then it must be the other component. It must be the third step. So I'll just return the component called other, and I also need to import it. So I'll just come over here at the top, and I'll just say that I want to import other from other, like this, other info actually. So I should probably call this other info, like this. So what we're doing right now is we're just saying that in the body, we're going to display whatever this function page display returns, and it returns based on which page we're in. So if we're in the first page, it should return the sign up info form. If we're in the second one, it should return the personal info form. And if we're in the third one, it should return the last form. So we can check to see if this is working because each component of them has different text, right? The other one says other, the other one says, the personal one says personal, and the sign up one says sign up. So what I want to see is that in the first one, it says sign up, the second one, it says personal, and the third one, it says other. And I can keep going from one to another. Now, it means it's working, so I want to add the skeleton for each of this, forms, right? So I want to add the inputs for the sign up, the inputs for the personal one, and the inputs for the other, and then I'll put in the CSS that I have pre-made, so it kind of looks like a form because right now it doesn't look like a form at all, and we can see how it looks and then make the final changes to it. So what we want to do is I want to come over here into one of the components. So in our case, we want to come to the sign up component, and I just want to add some of the inputs that I want in this component. So for the sign up component, what I want to do is I just want to add a class name over here in the div and just differentiate from the other components. So I'll call it sign up container like this. And what I want to do is I want to put the inputs inside of here. So let's just add a simple input over here for email. So I'll say inputs of type text. Then I'll put the placeholder for it to be just saying like something like email to just let the user know that this is the email field. And you should see that on this one, we now see the email. So I'll add inputs for the password and the confirm password. And you can see, so password, confirm password, and you should see that now they should appear. Obviously, CSS will make them stack on top of each other, but for now, this is good. And I can alternate between them, and the fields change completely. Now that I showed you guys what to do with this inputs, I'll just add the forms for the other two, just to not make this video super long, and come back in a second to show you guys. Okay everyone, so I just added all of the other forms. You can see that similar to the sign up one, for the personal info, we have 3 inputs, first name, last name, and username. And we also changed the class name to be something related to this component. Then for the other info, we do the same thing. I just put 2 inputs on this one because I couldn't come up with an example better, but yeah, this should fit in to whatever you guys have to do. And not be exactly the same as I'm doing because it doesn't make sense for your guys' purpose. But in this case, you can see I just add inputs for each one of them. Now you can see that when I come over here and I alternate, now we have different forms for each page, which is amazing. I decided that now I will just put in some of the CSS so you guys can see how it looks, like how similar it looks now to the final product. But again, check out the CSS code in the description so you guys can kind of do the same if you want to. You don't really need to. You can just style this however you want if you're just here for the logic behind creating this form. But I'm gonna add the CSS and I'll be back in a second. Okay, everyone. So with a simple Control C, Control V, it already looks a lot better and a lot similar to what the final product looks like. Now you can see that the progress bar also is over here, but it's not currently working. Like I can go through the pages, but it doesn't actually change. The progress bar is just, as you can see, let me come over here. It's basically just a div that will be progressively filling up with a span inside of it. So you'll see what I mean by that. But basically, I just added all of that CSS inside of this app.css file. It's a lot of CSS that I wrote, and you can just check it out in the description. So for the progress bar, which is one thing that we really want to do right now, all we have to do is the following. I'll put a span or a div. Actually, it doesn't matter what you want to put, but I'll just put a div over here inside of this progress bar. And basically, what I did is the progress bar above is this over here is just a white rectangle, the size of the progress bar. And the div inside of it will be dynamically changing its width so that it fills up. So how do I dynamically change its width? Well, with CSS, you can just give percentages. So I'll just say that when you're in the first page, it is 33.3% of the page, and it is 33% because we have only 3 forms. But basically, you'll just say that it's 1/3 of the way through. Then when we click the next button and we're in this page, then it fills up now 66% of the div, the rectangle, and at the end it fills up 100%. So how do we do that? Right now it just fills in the initial ones, but we're not dynamically changing. Well, the way we do this is the following. We'll come over here to this div, we'll give a style directly into in React in our JSX, and we'll just say that the width of this will be equal to the following. If the page is equal to 0, then I want to make it equal to 33.3%, right? Because it makes sense. That's what I mentioned before. If it is the first page, we only want to fill in 33% of it. Well, if it is not the first page, then now we need to ask 2 more things. Now, the first page, is it the second page? Because if it is, then I want to fill in 66.6%, right? But if it's not the first page or the second page, then we can just put an else statement and say that we want to fill in 100% of the div. Well, if you're not familiar with the ternary operators, this might seem super confusing to you. But basically, with ternary operators, we just say if this, then do this, else do this. So in our case, we're saying if page is equal to 0, then we want it to be 33%, else check to see if the page is equal to 1, because if it is, then 66, but if it's not, 100%. And we can see that this works because in the sign up page, it fills in 33% of the progress bar, in the next one, 66, and in the last one, 100%. You can keep going backwards and forwards, and it fills in perfectly. So if you want to have something differently from a progress bar, like, I don't know, you just like a number or something like over here at the top, you can dynamically change based on the page. And this is the point that I really wanted to show you guys. This is a piece of logic that is used in many different things, including, for example, creating carousels or any other things you want to do in your React applications. But I just wanted to really show you guys this because I feel like it is something that you can reuse for many different use cases. So now that we have this set up, I feel like what we have to do now is just make it so that when you write something, because right now if I write something over here, and I go forward, you can see that if I come back, it's not there anymore. Especially because we're not keeping track of what the user is writing. So the only way of doing this is by using states to store the values of what the user is writing in the inputs. So how exactly will we do that? Well, I want to know what the user wrote in the signup info inputs when I am in the other info input, right? When I'm over here, I want to keep track of what the user is writing for each of the inputs in each of the forms. So we need to find some sort of way to hold all of that information in a single place. And there's many different ways of doing this. You can use some sort of state management library to like hold the values of the states and all. You can just Redux. You can use the context API. I don't find it that useful for this case because I feel like it would be just over engineering something that can be done a lot simpler. And the way I like to do this is the following. I will come over here and I'll create another state. So const, and I'll call it form data. And remember, this is on the form component, which calls all the other components. So it needs to be on the parent one, the highest level component that calls all the other ones. And we're going to say set form data and set it equal to use state. And over here, this is going to be an object. This object will start out with all of the different inputs or all the different fields that we want to keep track of the information. So for example, in our case, we have 3 forms, but in each form, we grab different pieces of information. On the first one, we want to know the email, the password, and the confirmed password. So I'll just say over here that initially, this form data will be an object with the fields email, but email will be empty, then password, but password will be empty, and I wrote password wrong, and then finally confirm password, and it will be empty as well. So what I want you guys to do is to go through every one of the inputs over here on each of the forms and just come to the state that we're creating and add a new field for that input and set it equal to its empty value. Now all of our inputs are text inputs, so that's why the empty values are text. But if you grab some sort of information like age, make sure you put a 0 instead of an empty string, because that will be the initial value for the input. Now I'm going to do this real quick and come back in a second. You guys should do the same thing. Okay, so as you can see, we have here one for email, one for password, one for confirmed password, one for first name, last name, username, nationality, and other, which are all the fields that we have in our multi-step form. Now, why is this useful? Well, because what I can do is I can come into one of the forms, like I'll come to the sign up one, and I can just say that if someone writes in this input, I want to alter the form data to hold that information. But to do that, I need to access this form data variable over here and the set form data function inside of the signup.info.js and also inside of all the other components as well. So what I want to do is I want to say that this component take in 2 props. The first prop will be the form data state, and the second prop will be the set form data function. Why do we need both? Well, because if I want the email, for example, to be set to, like if I move over here and I come back and I want to see the value that I had here before to be the same, the way I do this is basically I just give it a value and I set it equal to form data dot email. So whatever we are storing as whatever the user wrote in that email part of the form data, that will be the value. And you can see that right now it won't show anything because we're not even passing for the signup for both states. So I'll just pass it over here. Form data is equal to form data, and set form data is equal to set form data. You should see that if I do this, right now it doesn't say anything, but if I alter the initial state for email and I give it something like this, no, it's not an email, but you can see now it's like this. And if I move forward and I come back, it's still here. So it's not like changing if I go to the other steps, which is what we want. So the only thing we need to change now is to populate this instead of random letters with whatever the user was writing inside of the input. So for that, we just use the set form data and say that on change, whenever there's a change to this input, I want to call a function which takes in like an event over here, and it sets the form data. And this is a pretty complicated thing, so I just want you guys to pay attention to this. Basically, when there's any changes to this input, I want to set the form data to be exactly what it was before, because form data is an object with a bunch of fields, and I only want to alter a single one of them. So the way we do this is we say that I want to keep it the same as it was before by saying ... form data. But then I want to change the email field and set it equal to whatever the user is writing on the current inputs. So this is how you alter a single field in a state that is an object. So if I write on the email one, I write like, I don't know, pedro@gmail.com, and I go to the next one, or even to the last tab. If I come back to the first one, pedro@gmail.com is still there, which is amazing. It means it's working. So this is kind of the flow of what you need to do for each of the inputs. You need to set its value to be what value it is in the form data state, and we need to change that state based on if you're writing on the input. So I'll copy this and I'll paste it on the password and the confirm password as well, and change it based on whichever input it is. So it is the password one, so I need to write here password, and I'll change the password field instead of the email one. And I'll do the same thing for this one, confirm password, and this will be confirm password. Now that we did for all of these inputs over here, so I can do this, I can put the same password, as you can see, and I can move to the next ones and come back, and they will all still be there. Now, it's pretty much just doing the same thing now with the other steps. So I'll just do the same thing for the personal info component and for the other component, and I'll be back in a second. Remember that to do that, you need to import the state like this at the top. So for example, for the personal info one, I do need to import the state at the top, and make sure that I also pass this information or the states as props to that component. So do that to your components. I'll be doing that to the other one as well, and I'll be back in a second with this done. Okay, so I'm back, and as you can see, I did the same thing for the personal info.js component and the other info.js component. I literally did the same things for each of the inputs, and in the form.js, I just passed as props the same states that I did for the signup one, and now as you can see, it is working perfectly. I can just put information. I'm not going to put actual information. I'm just going to write stuff, but you can see that it's saved. Like if I go to the last one, I can come back and alter the form, and everything that I wrote is saved, which is amazing. Now, the final thing that we really want to do is being able to submit this form. I'm not going to submit it to an API or anything like that. You do whatever makes sense for you. But what I want to do is I want to get to the end of the form, and when I get to the end, I want this little button over here to change from saying next to saying submit, and when I click on it, it does something. So the way we do this is I'll come here, and instead of our button next, instead of displaying the word next at all times, I want to actually conditionally render this based on the value of page. Now we know that page is the state which determines which page we're in. So if page is on the last page, so if page is equal to form titles, which is the array we have, the length -1, which means we are in the last page, then I want to say that I basically would just want to display in the button the word submit. But if it's not, then I want to display the word next. And as you can see, this dynamically changes really well. If I'm not in the last page, it says next. If I'm in the last one, it says submit. But right now, I can't click on this button because we disabled it, as you can see over here. So I don't want to disable it anymore. If you're in the last one, we don't move forward. Instead of that, we'll just ask on our on click over here if we are in the last one. So I'll say if we are in the last page, then I want to do something. Else, I just want to increment, right? Because that makes sense. The button will do two things differently depending on which page they're in. And the one that we want to do when we're in the last page is, for now, just alert a message saying something like form submitted, like this. And you can see that I can do that pretty well, and it says form submitted. Now, do you really want to see if it actually kept track of the data that we wrote? Well, to see that, I can just console log that data over here. But as I told you, here is where you would do something like actually sending the form data to an API or something like that. But as you can see, if I just say console log form data, and I'll refresh the page and actually put information like pedro@gmail.com. Let's call the password, and do the same thing for the confirm password. Click next. I'll just put the name Pedro, last name Machado, username PedroTech. Then I'll put my nationality Brazilian. And other, I'll just put whatever. If I open my console log over here, you guys should see that if I click submit, it should say, it should include the object that we created. So you can see that it did include with all the data that we inputted in our inputs. So that's basically it. Remember that all of the code for this will be in the description. Again, I didn't want to focus on the CSS. I just wanted to focus on the logic. But if you want to take a look at the CSS, it will also be in the description. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like down below and comment what you want to see next. Subscribe because I'm posting 2 times a week and I'll massively appreciate it if you guys could support the channel. And yeah, that's basically it. Really hope you guys enjoyed it and I see you guys next time.